this culture of like self-censorship and fear, and what is the cost to us by doing this? So all the greatest relationships are ones with all the sandpaper and the joy. You know, it's like, I don't accept the premise that because you say something to somebody that they don't want to hear, you lose all ability to talk to them. Make a case against it. Or
I think there's definitely danger in compromising too much, because eventually you compromise on a good thing so much it turns into a bad thing, right? But I do think that tempering our words and maybe leaning a little bit on the self-control side.
Good.
So I'm very much into building up the emotional capital before I spend it.
It's very good.
Well, that's scriptural, though, because the Proverbs tells us that the wise in heart ponders
There we go.
what to
Right.
say, but the
Very
fool
thoughtful.
just spouts out
Right.
whatever he feels like saying, and I think that's
Right.
so I think it's a good thing.
But then the danger is to do it too often can be appeasing rather than building someone up. And so then the loving action is actually not loving. What is the Spirit calling me to do in this situation? And sometimes you have an idea, and sometimes your temperament kind of influences that idea. Like I err on holding back a little bit, seeing where things go, whereas you err on the side of like straight, this is truth,
Right.
this is right or wrong.
Right.
And I think there's room for those temperaments, and then the Spirit does what the Spirit will.
Edifies. Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, was it in Colossians 4 where we talk about let your speech be flavored with grace, seasoned, as it were, with salt, so that you may know how to respond to each person.
And
right?
this is the
so
goal.
this is biblical.
Perfectly laid out, the goal of the believer.
The last generation or so has been really, really big on recognizing and dealing with bully culture, right?
Right.
I mean, you would deal with the bully in a way that 2 generations ago, you'd go home, your dad would say, well, just punch him back, right? Nowadays, we have educators and administrators who are just like trying to protect kids and, oh, he said something unkind. Okay, send him to me. I want to have a counseling session with him.
Yeah.
But that very culture that it seemed like we were trying to address socially in society through school it's not succeeded, because what we find now is a few voices are being intimidating. And some of these are coming out of like progressive educational environments, right? So it's like, as long as it's my point of view, don't try to bully or intimidate me, but I can present to you the way I say things are going to go. And you try to speak up against it and I'm going to intimidate you.
Yes.
It's just, there's just power play
Yes, so the
going
whole
on.
lexicon is around protecting the downtrodden, the less than. But that's just a veneer for the back end loaded intention, which is actually strangely
Yes.
censorship, intimidation, all the opposite things. A very two-pronged tongue there. Why do you think that's succeeded? Because you have some unique knowledge in having been in education. Because that did succeed. We all define acceptance and tolerance through that lens that you just set up, rather than what it really is. So how did they pull that off?
People with those perspectives came into positions of influence, culturally, academically, other, and they're filling leadership roles in our society, and they're well funded, and they're bent, they're determined on the promotion of that perspective.
I read a book called The Closing of the American Mind. You ever hear it? Yeah. At one point, all these major juggernaut universities, Harvard, Stanford, all this stuff, right? All Christian focused and actually intended to create pastors, evangelism. So all the professors and stuff, all the founders of these universities, all very godly people, right? Or at least professing so. But because they adhered to a certain ideology, which is open-mindedness and listen and all these like educational principles where we debate everything out, because they actually had those in their heart, they opened the door to a bunch of dogmatists that were only using those principles to close the door behind them. So says these books. And then you see the baton pass, and then the universities clamp down on tenureship. So what these godly people did in allowing different ideological strains to be tenured.
Socratic dialogues and
Right.
things where the truth will come out, because truth is truth.
Exactly.
So don't be afraid
So
of
give
debating.
that an arena. They've pulled up all the drawbridges behind them, and we find ourselves in this very like homogenous, stale.
And they've taken the dictionary and redefined, you know, all the things that for millennia meant one thing, and now they're going to mean something else.
Kingdom Come Podcast. The Kingdom Come Podcast on Rumble.